Well, welcome to Session 1 of Christianity 101, a session we call God's Story. God's Story, this session, is really about just considering life from the larger perspective of what God might be up to in the world today. See, we feel like if you can understand what God's up to in this world, you'll understand your life better. In fact, our big idea reads this way. It says, your story is part of an epic story that God is writing in this world. And seeing what God is up to can change your entire perspective. I really want to mix in a couple analogies and a movie clip to this talk. So let's see if I can frame this in a way that you'll understand well. First of all, if you've ever been an actor and stood on stage, you know that it is impossible to act out a scene without knowing where the rest of the play is going. But so often in life, we feel that way. We feel like we're actors on a stage, that we've got maybe a snippet of script or maybe no script at all. We're in the midst of people carrying on different roles, and we don't know what act to play. We don't know ultimately what purpose we're supposed to be living out that changes or makes things work the way they're supposed to work. We believe that God's story, what's contained in the Bible, sets us up for knowing the whole script from beginning to end of what is happening in this world. And that by knowing that whole script, you can stand on stage and play the role that God wants you to play in a way that fits and that makes you feel like you have purpose, understanding, that even gives you joy in knowing that you're doing what you're doing well. And we truly believe that's what this foundational knowledge of the Christian life is going to help you get, is a foundation, a perspective of the play for where God is working, where God's doing. Now, so often we don't act in real life, but we do things like drive. And if you're like me and you're on the interstate on a frequent basis, you may be constantly looking at the traffic via your phone to see where the wrecks are at and whether or not they're going to slow you down. And if you do get stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic, it's a whole lot better knowing where that wreck is at and how far away you are from it to know whether you can go around it, whether or not you're going to be sitting in that traffic long, or whether or not you should just turn back and go home, which often is the case when it comes to trying to go to Nashville or coming home from Nashville. Truly, I hope that what you understand as you take this class and understand God's bigger story is a little bit of that perspective. You know, what you're supposed to be doing. You get kind of a bird's eye picture from something that you can't understand yourself because you're limited in where you're sitting and what perspective you're getting. Now, last analogy I want to give you that helps me understand this better is an analogy from a movie that I really love. It was put out over a decade ago called The Truman Show. The Truman Show is a fictitious story of a guy who is born into a reality television show, and he's the main star. And they built this entire world around that one reality show, so much so that he never leaves, never sees the walls, never understands that he's actually on television. Everything is hidden and coded, and the actors are sworn into secrecy so that he never gets a hint of the fact that he's actually the star of a television show in a fictitious world. Now, how does that relate to us? Well, so often when I get to talking about faith with people, again, their perspective on faith comes from personal experience. It also comes from the people that have played roles in their life. It can stem from how you were raised, how your parents modeled authority. So many people who have trouble with God because their parents maybe weren't trustworthy, or in a lot of ways, especially even in my own experience, you have a parent who was mean or authoritative and just demanded things of you, and you feel like that's the way God is because their actions being an authority in your life gave you perspective on what you thought God was. Well, that's what happens to Truman in this show. Everybody has set him up to believe he's in a television show, and his whole life he's lived believing a lie. But when he gets to his middle age, things begin to break down. He gets a couple hints that make him consider life not from the perspective he's been raised with, but from a completely different perspective. And over the 10 weeks of this class, I believe you're going to see life, get a chance to see life from a different perspective. Someone in your class may give you the chance to see life from the perspective of someone who's not a Christian, maybe comes from a background of Islam. And that would be really cool because seeing life from a different perspective can help you gain and debate what the true picture really is. And I feel like these next 10 weeks with Foundations, you'll begin to see glimpses. And when you go back and compare those with reality, you begin to see truly that those things do line up better than your old perspective. And you begin to move in a way that changes your life. In Truman's case, he begins to realize he's been living in a fake world, and that and that his new knowledge demands that he live in the real world. And he's compelled to do that even when there are significant barriers to changing his perspective, even when they try to keep him in the fake world, even when they try to kill him. So, and I hope and believe that that this paradigm shift is one that you'll have either in a little way or hopefully even in a bigger way. One that compels you into a life change in a positive direction by comparing one life to another. So watch this clip of The Truman Show, and then let's get into discussion on what it looks like to see God's story and then find our place in the midst of that.
Comets are still headed.
What else is on?
Yeah, let's do what else is.
Coming to you now from the largest studio ever constructed, it's The Truman Show!
Yeah!
Good morning!
Good morning.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
What if?
No scripts, no cue cards.
Morning, Spencer. How's it going?
What if you were watched every moment of your life?
How many cameras you got there in that town?
5,000.
I believe Truman is the first child to have been legally adopted by a corporation.
That's correct.
Brilliant.
What if everyone you knew was pretending?
Hi, honey. Look what I got at the checkout. Dishwasher safe.
That's amazing.
What if your world was make-believe?
Cue the sign. While the world he inhabits is counterfeit,
I'm not allowed to talk to you.
That's how I look. Not your type.
there's nothing fake about Truman himself.
What if you didn't know it? Until now.
A lot of strange things have been happening.
Stand by ring cam.
Is he looking at us?
Does he think he knows? I think I'm mixed up in something. Something big.
We accept the reality with which we're presented.
Everybody's pretending, Truman. Get out of here. Come and find me. Truman? Truman!
Anything happen?
No.
You may find yourself in another part of the world.
Feels like the whole world revolves around me. Everybody seems to be in on it. I'm going away for a while.
You may tell yourself, this is not my beautiful wife. And you may ask yourself, how did I get here?
I'm not in on it, Truman, because the last thing that I would ever do is lie to you.
Fade up music. That's our hero shot.
He's gone.
Okay? Yes!
Want to do it again?
No!
Find him.
Truman, where are you going?
You can do it.
How do we stop him?
Give me some lightning.
Is that the best you can do?
Cut transmission!
I like your pen. I was wondering that myself.
Jim Carrey. The Truman Show. Watch what happens.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip of The Truman Show. It really is, again, a favorite movie of mine just for the dramatic presence that's seen in there and just the story that it tells. Beyond that, if you're watching this and weren't able to take part in the small group discussion that we have as a part of our Christianity 101 class, I want to give you a couple things to do just as kind of personal reflection over the course of this next week in preparation for that group meeting that will happen on Sunday. A couple questions you could write about. What has shaped my concept of God? What people, what books, what videos that you've experienced, maybe what class did you take in college that has shaped your perspective of God? And do you believe it shaped it for the better or for the worse? Particularly, I would answer the question, what about my parents? How did they shape my concept of God? What qualities or characteristics did they possess that I attribute to God now? I would answer the question, were those influences good or bad to me? And then lastly, what role has God played in your story up to the present time? If you believe there's a God and that He has been doing something in your life, what has He been doing up until this point in your life? Just kind of describe that real briefly. And again, for me, as someone who gets so much more out of writing it out, I would encourage you to grab a sheet of paper and just try to answer these 3 questions real simply on that sheet of paper, as well as to kind of reread that summary that you're going to get via email and begin to interact with it as well. So, we'll see you next week.